You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
All right, we're back with the Storm Tracker podcast. Great win for the Canes this weekend on the road in Georgia against Georgia Tech. I think it was pretty nice to see the team bounce back like that, especially after that embarrassing loss to Florida State. But Frank, what were your thoughts on that? Just the team's reaction in terms of after losing a game like that to Florida State and, putting together probably their most complete game of the season.
I think it's another reason that patience is going to be needed going forward. All the young kids had an influence in this win. The Wesley Saints, the Inez Coopers, the Jakari Browns. You can even lump in Jalen Knighton. He hasn't been here that long. He's still a sophomore. So it's proof that there is still hope for the Miami Hurricanes going forward. This is not a season where they were able to put anything together substantially, but I don't think the expectations should have been that it was 9 or 10 wins. We had hope at the beginning of the year, and I think fandom kind of clouded our minds. But overall, this is just a beacon of hope that things are going to get better. Jakari Brown is what I think Miami has needed. Right. For weeks, I've been trying to tell people a dual threat quarterback is going to be vital to modernize this offense going forward. You don't got to throw the ball 50-something times. You can throw the ball 20 times and still score 35 points. You can utilize your offensive line strengths, which is a lot of size, strength. The weight training program obviously worked this offseason because everybody put more weight on. Everybody looks better physically. And they kind of utilize just allowing guys to bully people up front. I know it was Georgia Tech. They're not exactly a powerhouse, but you get the sign that when the guys that are bought in are actually given an opportunity to play, the results are better.
Yeah, I agree with you. In terms of, top performances in this game, obviously the biggest one we probably want to touch base on is Cameron Kinchin's 3 interceptions. Pass deflection, 8 tackles, one of those interceptions going for 99 yards, house call from end zone to end zone, touchdown. Tremendous performance by him. Even Alonzo Highsmith, just giving him his credit on Twitter Saturday night, just saying, I've scouted guys for about 24 years, Alonzo said, and never have I seen a safety have that type of game in college. So I think that was quite a great moment for him. Also with those 3 interceptions, tying the single game record at Miami, 3 interceptions in one game. The last time that was done, 2006 by Kenny Phillips against Duke. So it's been quite some time. Frank, your thoughts on Cam?
I've been saying it all along. He's the MVP of this team. He's the best tackler, something that you talk about all the time. 6 interceptions on the year now. He's one of the best players in regards to consistency on a week-to-week basis. He just does it all. He's been like this since Miami Northwestern, since Little League, as a Miami kid. He's just one of those building block players that Miami is going to have to lean on while he's still here. Everybody hoped it was going to be the James Williams and the Avante Williams of the world, but Cam Kinchins has proven that he was an absolute steal when he came to Miami. He's still just a sophomore. And I think he's a program type guy that is going to be one of those players that prove that guys are going to stay the full length of time. I hope he becomes a senior leader for this team at some point. He's a guy that has all-American potential. He's going to be in that conversation this year. He's going to be an all-conference player. What is it not to love about Cam Kinchins?
Yeah, he's leading the ACC now in interceptions. The last time Miami even had a player with 6 interceptions, that was 2015 with Artie Burns. He finished that 2015 season with 6 interceptions. Prior to that, 10 interceptions by Sean Taylor. So you're talking about, those 10 was in 2003. But you're talking about the most interceptions by a safety at Miami in practically almost 2 decades. Most interceptions by any DB tied with Artie Burns at this point over the last 20 years as well. So it's very impressive. Miami still has anywhere between 2 to 3 games left in this season. You think more could be coming for Cam?
Maybe one. We saw at the beginning of the year he had a stretch of games where he picked up those first 3 interceptions of the year. And then there was that layoff until last week, of course. It's hard to get interceptions. And I think Clemson is going to try to really control Miami through the trenches. They're going to try to run it down their throat, a la Travis Etienne when Miami played him. So it's going to be hard. Pitt's going to use a really run-heavy approach as well. So I don't think he needs to get another interception this year to see this as a successful season for him. Could you put it past Cam Kinchins? Absolutely not. He's, in my opinion, the best player on the team this season. And if he got another 1 or 2, that would be completely within the realm of possibility for me.
Yeah, he had a tremendous grade by Pro Football Focus, 93.7 coverage grade during Saturday's game. That's like elite as it can get for a single game. Speaking about Pro Football Focus grades, this we were talking about before the pod, and I think we really got to jump on this here and talk about it because you and me have been saying this for some time. Wesley Bissainthe, he needs to play more. We didn't understand why he wasn't playing more. Finally got his first start for Miami on Saturday, had his best game. He's actually graded out as the second best freshman linebacker in the entire country. He's only behind Harold Perkins, which I'm sure many people saw in that LSU-Arkansas game. That kid is a freak, his own self. But Wesley Bissainthe, 78.1 Pro Football Focus grade. Impressive. Frank, your thoughts?
Always been one of my favorite players. Always been one of my favorite players since I was covering him at Miami Central. He's graded out better than majority of our linebackers the entire year. He's been first or second in pretty much every single game this season. He was once again over a 70 grade for this game, was exceptional overall. He's probably the most physical player we have at the second level, and that includes Corey Flagg, who gets TFL numbers and is solid when playing downhill. But overall, Wesley is an old school linebacker that Miami hasn't had in a while. He's got the modern skill set of being able to run a 4.5 caliber 40. He's got the ability to drop into coverage, something that Caleb Johnson and Corey Flagg haven't proven to be able to do it at all. And honestly, it's been rough sledding at linebacker for a while since like Shaq Quarterman, I would probably say. And I think even he kind of under-delivered at points during his tenure at Miami. I love Wesley Bissainthe, and I think that you have guys at each level of this defense. You got the Leonard Taylors of the world. You got the Darrell Jacksons, the Nigel Kellys. Hopefully Cyrus Moss becomes one of those guys. Then you got Wesley Bissainthe. You got the 3 linebackers coming in. You got Cam Kinchins on the back end. Hopefully Darryl Porter, who graded out really well this week as well. And on top of Cormani McClain, potentially Damari Brown. The sky is the limit for the next couple of years at Miami on defense. I think the biggest question is it going to be Coach Steele leading them or somebody else?
Yeah, I agree with you. The biggest thing that stood out to me in terms of Wesley's performance on Saturday, I kept pointing this out, sniffing out those dump passes out of the backfield to the running backs, which I've seen Miami get killed by for years. And the last linebacker I can recall at Miami that sniffed out those check down passes when everything breaks down in terms of the pocket and the quarterback's looking for someone to throw the ball to. We've seen this for countless years. Miami just gets killed by the check down pass to the running back, just a swing pass out of the backfield. Wesley, he played it almost to perfection. It reminded me of Sean Spence, and it's kind of funny because they both wear the same. Sean wore 31 at Miami, and Wesley's now wearing 31 at Miami too. So it just passed my mind. I'm like, man, he reminds me of Sean Spence when he does that. Like it's almost like his instincts is just it's on a different level compared to some of the other linebackers on this team. And I think it was very prevalent in this game. And I think that type of performance and just flashes we've seen this year moving forward, I don't see how he gives up his starting job from this point on. Would you agree?
100%. 100%. And Caleb Johnson had another horrible game, graded out as one of the worst players in the team this week. He's going to be a lock-in starter. They talked about him as an elite player. A guy that he kind of reminds me of that never got a chance to really develop at Miami just because of off-the-field stuff is Jermaine Grace.
Yep.
A little undersized, super explosive, physical, got that South Florida mentality, good in coverage, fast and physical. He's just fast and physical, and that's who he really reminds me of. He could be what Jermaine Grace was supposed to become coming out of Miramar. I think next year he's going to be a team captain type guy. He's starting to make media appearances now as well, which is going to be huge for his confidence and his growth as a leader on this team. He is an NFL style player, especially with defenses transitioning to the 4-2-5 scheme more and more. Having a guy that can flex out as a strong safety type player while being able to play in the box, something that James Williams should be doing, is a breath of fresh air at the University of Miami.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see between, Wesley now stepping up. Unfortunately, Chase Smith is out for the rest of this season with an injury. But, even Chase Smith's development in the spring, he's a guy that I'm also high on too, one of the younger linebackers in that room, just between his athleticism and length. But between those two guys and you bring in another three like Raul Aguirre, Bobby Washington, Malik Bryant, that room is getting an injection of talent next year. And now you have Wesley Basaint really stepping up on this back half end of the season. It's starting to look a little promising for Miami at that position. And it's been some years. I'll be honest here. Some Canes fans, they said, I can't wait for Shaq Quarterman and Michael Pinckney to leave Miami, which I thought was crazy in itself when Canes fans said that at the time. But, hey, sometimes you get what you wish for, and it's not necessarily what you really need. But moving forward, though, obviously one of the biggest headlines coming into this game, Ja'Carri Brown starting his homecoming, coming back to his home state in Georgia. Beautiful performance by him. 3 touchdowns, protected the ball, no turnovers. Even almost had 100 yards on the ground. He had 87 to my recollection. But, hey, if he got maybe a few more reps, I think he could have eclipsed 100 yards too. But I think he had basically the type, and how would I put it into better words? Probably the best type of performance you would want from a freshman quarterback in their first start. And mind you, I saw this statistic pass by during the game. Ja'Carri's 3 touchdowns is the most touchdowns by a freshman starter at the University of Miami since 2014 in a single game. So very impressive. Frank, your thoughts?
I think the biggest thing that Ja'Carri did in this game was he was 14 of 20 as a passer, proving that he's capable of being accurate. He was able to stand in the pocket, deliver throws. The offensive line gave him a chance as well. No quarterback hits, just 1 sack allowed, only 1 TFL allowed, I think. Or maybe I think there was only a couple potential TFLs or anything like that. The offensive line did a tremendous job. They played for Ja'Carri Brown. No turnovers, right? Ran for almost 100 yards. I think 87 was because of sack yardage lost or something like that. And 3 touchdowns. We haven't had a touchdown in almost 3 games. And this kid put up 3 in 1 game and helped lead this offense to 21 points in the 4th quarter. That's one thing that people don't realize as well. Miami has, even when they've been able to score points this year, it's usually been in the first half. They've been really able to start off pretty strong with Tyler Van Dyke, and then the passing game kind of tapers off towards the end of the game. It's like we putter out towards the end. And Ja'Carri Brown was able to start off a little slow, baby, But overall, I mean, the first drive they scored, but outside of that, like you put up 35 points. 35 points. Even when Miami was throwing the ball 57 times, they were scoring 24, 21, 20 points. 20, you scored 35 points on 20 throws. That is as efficient as it comes.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. And, just in that same context of just freshmen that are really starting to come into their own in this second half of the season, I think it was great to see a guy like Jaleel Skinner getting his first touchdown, which, by the way, credit to one of the photographers pointed this out. I think this was back in the North Carolina game. Really should have been Jaleel Skinner's second touchdown of the season, but it is what it is. Um, Awesome seeing him getting a touchdown. Jaden Harris got out there. I think he had like two pass breakups towards the end of the game. Markeith Williams, freshman safety, getting in there. He looked active, physical. Obviously, he still has to build up, just in terms of physical stature, but still impressive seeing some of those young guys getting out there and getting reps. I really loved seeing that. And obviously, one of the other biggest ones, and we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, Inez Cooper at right guard. He's really moving people up front, and I think he's kind of given some juice to Miami's run game recently.
Yeah, it's 100% true. The running game is going to be vital going forward. The Josh Gaddis offense is successful when you're able to rush for 200-plus yards. It's proven at Michigan. Right? Rooster being able to rush for 100 yards, the fourth individual 100-yard rushing performance of the year, is huge. And I know people want to say that the offense hasn't worked. If you go back and look at the numbers during Rhett Lashley's time, they were terrible rushing the football, one of the worst teams in the country. There were only 300-yard individual performances all last season. We're going to probably double that by the time the season is done. And Rooster being able to come to life a little bit, and Henry Parrish being banged up but probably healthy enough to play next week, means that you're going to have a potential two-headed monster, and you're going to have Jakari Brown, who is an 11th guy on this offense that you have to respect with the ball in his hand, right? There is ability on this offense that we haven't seen ever, maybe. Like De'Ara King, loved him, really good player. He is not as physically gifted as Jakari Brown is. And I don't think that he's got the same arm talent as Jakari Brown as well. I know the accuracy issues that people talk about. He proved that that's not exactly a total issue this week with his 14 of 20. I think that this offense is what you can win games with, especially in the ACC, being able to limit the quarterbacks in this conference and keep them off the field, control the clock. They had possession of 35 minutes in this game. That's huge. They had more than 11 minutes more of time of possession than Georgia Tech in this game. If you can control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, and punish teams throughout 4 quarters, you got a chance. You always got a chance.
I agree with you. And in terms of Jakari Brown, he got here in the spring, and I'll go just a tiny bit in depth on this. I happened to have a chance to speak with the kid during spring practices, following one of his practices during the spring, and he was telling me, and Steve-O, our film guy here at Canes County, he was telling us both that he spoke with Bernie Kosar and some of the other former great Canes quarterbacks, and he was telling us that Bernie was telling him, I see it in your eyes. I see it in your face, man. You're anxious. You're impatient. You want to get out there on the field, but Bernie told him your time is coming. Like, you just got to be patient. Your time is coming. And I don't think it could have been written better. His first start, being back in his home state, great game that he put together. And before we get into this debate that obviously every Canes fan is wondering about now, between Tyler Van Dyke and Jakari Brown now moving forward. Obviously, things don't look so great in terms of the outlook for Jake Garcia's future at Miami now, especially with Jakari Brown's arrival on the field. Before we get into that, Canes fans, anyone that's listening right now, I'm going to plug you into our social accounts. Check out Canes_County on Twitter, Canes.County on Instagram, CanesCounty.com or Miami.Rivals.com. We are part of the Rivals Network. And let's get back into it. Frank, what's your take? Should Miami continue to roll with Ja'Carri Brown the rest of the way? Or do you think they should try to see if Tyler Van Dyke can give it a go before this season ends?
I think based off the comments from two previous quarterbacks that played on this team, you got Malik Rozier talked about he had shoulder issues, right, from that 10-win season, right? And he really was never the same. Scar tissue messed him up. Jaron Williams, I know he's got his issues and was a kind of a failure here at Miami. He also said he had shoulder issues and it made it so that he was never the same. And I believe he medically retired from it. Don't mess up Tyler Van Dyke. Even if he's not a future Miami Hurricanes quarterback, don't mess him up to bring him back for games that we should probably be seeing the young guys anyway. Let him get healed up for the end of the year. Go into the offseason. If he needs anything done to his shoulder, you make sure that he's healthy enough going into that procedure so that his recovery is reasonable. And then you go into a quarterback controversy into next season, not including Jake Garcia, obviously. Ja'Carri Brown fits this offense to a T. But Tyler Van Dyke, before getting hurt, showed so many glimpses of being the Tyler Van Dyke that we hoped. There was a stretch there where he was doing some really good things in the passing game. I felt like they were kind of putting too much on him in regard to the amount of attempts without balancing it with the rushing attack. But it seems if you're able to go into next season, if Jalen, Knighton stays, you have Henry Parrish, Trevante Citizen can get healthy. If you can add another running back in the 2023 class or in the transfer portal, you're able to have that rushing attack to help Tyler Van Dyke not be so dependent on willing this team to a victory. And I think that he's still probably the best quarterback in the roster. I love Ja'Carri Brown. I think this is going to be huge for his confidence going forward, but I still think Tyler Van Dyke is going to be the Miami quarterback next season, and you should sit him out and just kind of hope and pray that his shoulder is going to come back to what it was before.
I agree with exactly everything that you said, Frank. And, I'm personally of the opinion that, no, you should not rush back Tyler Van Dyke. I agree with you. Do not mess up his future. We've seen this happen all around college football. We've seen it happen around professional football as well. And, I personally think Ja'Carri will get the start heading into Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina. And it's going to be a learning experience for him because, it's a whole different animal going on the road playing Georgia Tech. Now you're going to go into Death Valley at Clemson, 81,000 screaming fans. That's a real big-time college football environment. But my other question is, what happens to Jake Garcia now?
I think Jake Garcia transfers, and he is another Jaron Williams, in my opinion. Not a problem off the field, but just an exciting arm talent that lost his confidence at some point. I don't think he's the answer. I don't think he fits this offense. He wasn't somebody that Miami recruited, this new staff recruited, right? It's just not a fit. I think he needs to go somewhere, start anew, get that confidence back, kind of get with a guy who's a quarterback guru, right? You go to a Lane Kiffin or something along those lines. Maybe go back out to the West Coast to a UCLA, take a year off and try to come back with a Chip Kelly. But I just don't think that he's a fit, and I don't think that he's better than Ja'Carri Brown, honestly. Ja'Carri Brown has always been a winner. Jake Garcia has really had some issues, and I know there are circumstances going around it. He's transferred 4 times in high school. So he's never really been that guy. He's always been a really good talent. There's always been a lot of hope that he's going to develop into something more and more special. But I think he's part of the issues with the evaluation process with quarterbacks and recruiting. You can get excited about an arm, but you shouldn't get caught up in just that. There are being one of the best teams in the country in high school football. And it's time for Jake Garcia to look for greener pastures.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's unfortunate the way it has turned out, but I think it's better for Miami. I don't like. Look, I'm with you, Frank. That I do expect Tyler Van Dyke to return next season, and I would love to see that quarterback competition this spring between Tyler and Jakari. I think Jakari can really push Tyler to continue to elevate his game. There's a lot of good things that Tyler has, just some things he needs to clean up. Maybe potentially a new offensive coordinator, maybe not. We will see at the end of the season. But, speaking about the future, obviously there was big news before this Georgia Tech game. Miami fans going crazy. Jaden Rashada flips to the Florida Gators. And a little context behind that. The Gator Collective, they were actually working behind the scenes, trying to get Rashada down on a visit. They were working out some NIL deal with him. A couple of things happened there. I spoke to some people after that decommitment. I think Miami will be fine. And I think it couldn't have been better timing. Just the arrival of Jakari Brown and his performance on the field last week. Look, I'm not crowning Jakari Brown, but it's promising when you get a first start like that, a first actual start in college football, and that type of performance. Yeah, it's a bright future. And you bring in an Emory Williams next year who can make almost any throw on the field. He just needs to clean up a bit of his mechanics. But you stash a guy like that on your roster and you go after another blue chip quarterback next year. I think Miami's quarterback room will be fine, regardless if Jake leaves or not. Your thoughts, Frank?
I think that Jakari Brown has made it so that you don't necessarily need a quarterback right in this 2023 class that is a blue chip type guy. Does it hurt to lose Jaden Rashada in this class? Absolutely, because it hurts your push for a potential top 3 type class. Now, you can still get to that top 5 ranking, in my opinion, with the Samson Okunlolas of the world buying in. If you get a Damari Brown, you get a few other guys, maybe a Tayshawn Lyons who's going to be potentially a recruiting bump type player. If Chris Johnson, there's so much room in this class. If you get to that 25 number that they should get to, you're going to be at the same number of prospects with a better average than the Florida Gators, who are still under the average with Jaden Rashada in the class. So he wasn't a make or break for me talent-wise at quarterback. I just think you always want to build your class around one blue chip type guy. Bring in a quarterback every year and have a guy that really brings hope to those 2023 or 2024 or 2025 kids. So next year they're going to have to go after the Air Norlands of the world, the DJ Lagaways of the world, the Michael Van Burens of the world. And if you can secure one of those, then it doesn't really hurt to lose Jaden Rashada from a roster perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, just my lasting takeaway with all that combined together, just all that quarterback talk, I've always said that I think Miami would be better off on offense, at least in the future, with a true dual threat quarterback. Obviously, there's some things that Jakari Brown needs to clean up in terms of, just touch on some deep balls and whatnot. But it's exciting. It's exciting to see what could potentially be in the future. And with that said, that's a wrap from the Storm Tracker podcast. You could check this podcast out on the Canes County YouTube channel. We'll have it up on the site as well, this podcast. Also check us out on social media as well, on Twitter at Canes_County, on Instagram at Canes.County. You could check out Frank's Twitter page as well at The Crib South FLA. And I'm also on Twitter as well at Rivals Geo. That's a wrap.